All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Rocky Series podcast. I am your host, Ryan, and I'm really excited. Today, we have a special guest with us. He's a comedian, but more importantly for me, he is a Rocky fanatic, is my understanding. This is Joe Matarese. Where are you hailing from right now, Joe?
Something's going on, Ryan.
Oh,
I'm
it-
hearing you twice.
okay. Is that my end or your end? Oh, there you go.
Where is that coming from? Why am I hearing? I just heard your question twice in two different time periods.
Oh, is it gone now?
No, I'll shut my volume, and I think that'll. Don't they
Yeah,
always say that on the radio? Shut your volume.
that's right. Turn off the radio, they say. Turn off the
But the
radio.
problem with that is then I don't hear your question.
Oh, you, yeah, you want to hear me.
Uh-oh. We didn't think about this.
No, I think the echo's gone on my end. I don't hear it anymore.
No, I'm
So,
hearing a delay, and I'm hearing it twice.
so it might be your end, brother.
Wait a second. I think I may have to do something here. Can you shut us off live and then us discuss and then go live again?
I'm not sure. I've never done that before.
Oh, now I hear you, but barely.
Oh, how's this?
Why am I hearing you twice?
I don't know. I thankfully only hear you once. Oh, I heard that. I think that's from your end, though.
This is going nuts. Hold on a second. Let me change my preference, my output preference.
It's okay, man. This is live. Okay, good. All right. So, Joe, where do you hail from?
Originally or now?
There's two types of listeners we have on this episode, I'm sure. We got the listeners who are fans of your comedy or
Mhm.
trolls.
Mhm.
And we got people that are Rocky fans who just listen to my show anyways, and they're going to hear about you for the first time. But
Okay.
I'm going to cater to your fans first. Let's find out about you. So were you born and raised? I want to know a little bit about your childhood.
Sure. I grew up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I mean, I wasn't born there. I lived in Upper Darby, Penn. Then my parents moved to the Burbs, which is Cherry Hill, New Jersey, on the other side of the tracks, as they would say. Upper Darby was getting kind of dicey, not a place they wanted to raise their kids, and they moved to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. If you don't know where Upper Darby is, it's about 15 minutes from Philadelphia in the Pennsylvania side. So then I moved about 15 minutes from Philadelphia on the New Jersey side over the Ben Franklin or the Walt Whitman Bridge, they would say.
Okay. No, I don't know any of that stuff. I'm from Western Canada.
Yeah, so you're going to learn a lot about the area here and who connects with Rocky and why.
Well, the East Coast certainly does have a special connection with rock. I know this is a common question, but I'm personally curious. I'm sure you're tired of answering this question, but I don't know your answer. Like, what was some of your earlier influences of comedians that when you saw them, like, boy, that guy's funny, and you found yourself enjoying comedy yourself? Who are people that made you laugh as a kid or even as a youth?
So, okay. The guys that I listened to when I was young that probably made me want to be a comedian, the big influences were definitely, I mean, the first one was Steve Martin. I used to listen to all his albums. I started buying them when I was in middle school. I had a neighbor that was into stand-up comedy also. And we were both just listening to Comedy Is Not Pretty, and was one we had. And what was the other one called? Getting Small or something like that. I vaguely remember. There was a lot of times growing up where I would go into my basement in times of arguing with my parents as a teen and instead listening to comedy. I remember having Billy Crystal's album I listened to a lot. I can remember that it's Marvelous or whatever. I think that's what it was called.
Right.
And then when Eddie Murphy started to break, I had his first album, which was just called Eddie Murphy. And then I had Delirious, and I was really into listening to that stuff.
Yeah, I remember when Delirious and Rock came out, and I was a kid, and I remember Eddie Murphy, of course, the Beverly Hills Cop, being fascinated by his comedy because even as a young child, I realized how vulgar this was for me to listen to this, but find it very funny. So I was a small child, but really get a kick out of that kind of humor at a young age. Almost taboo, you could say. I know
Sure.
it ages me a little bit too, but I do recall that as well.
pretty classic story is Artie Lang, Howard Stern's old sidekick, is a friend of
Yeah.
mine. And I can
Okay.
remember him and I having a discussion. I don't remember if it was on a podcast or not, but talking about watching Raw and then seeing Eddie Murphy imitating an Italian guy saying the word "mooly," and I remember Artie going, "Oh my God, they know." Black people know that Italian people call them moolies or moulignons. I remember Artie saying that, and us just cracking up when he said that. I can remember seeing Raw in the movie theater, and it's funny that for some reason I'm seeing a connection in my head between seeing Rocky movies in the movie. I don't know why it's connecting in my head. Maybe it's because in Raw, Eddie Murphy does the whole Sylvester Stallone thing, right? About
Oh,
how you
right.
think you can fight when you go see Rocky. And when I saw, I think it was Rocky 3, saw it in South Jersey, like I said, like 15 minutes from Philadelphia. And there were fights in the parking lot after the Rocky movie. Like people
Really?
like thought they could fight after they saw that movie. And like what Eddie Murphy was talking about really happened at a movie
Oh,
theater that I went when I saw Rocky 3.
was it Italians versus black guys, or was it?
No, it really was. It wasn't even it wasn't even a race thing. It was like how they say certain movies put you in a mindset,
Sure.
and now you're in it. You're in it for about an hour when you leave the movie.
I've never heard of that actually happening after a Rocky film. So to hear
Oh
that
yeah.
actually confirmed that you saw that happen, that's pretty funny.
This is how classic South Jersey and Philly people are when they go see a Rocky movie. I can also remember seeing Rocky 4. I think it was Rocky 4 in that same area. And there was like a line wrapped around the movie theater waiting to go see it. You know, these movies always come out on Thanksgiving. Like
Right.
Creed 2, I'm going to watch this week when I go to my parents in South Jersey. But I remember the line and some Italian guy in line going, "Yeah, I heard they cut out the Italian market." And like he was like pissed about it. Like
Oh, wow.
that was going to ruin the movie because they cut the Italian market out. I don't know what he was talking about. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's good. I like that. I like those anecdotes. When did you first kind of discover for yourself that you could tell a joke and you enjoyed making people laugh? There must have been a time where you're like, oh, I enjoy this. I enjoy making people. I mean, most people enjoy making people laugh, but not everyone can do it. Was it at school, at the school, the playground, with your parents? And did you have like little bits or routines that you'd even practice with your friends at a young age?
Well, that's what's weird about being a comedian. A lot of people think, oh, you were being funny, and that's why you became a comedian. I think I was being funny in my own imagination. I was a little like Rupert Pupkin performing alone in my basement. Those teen years, there was a lot of arguing going on with my parents, as probably most teens go through. I would just go hide down there, and I had like DJ equipment. I had like sound systems and like microphones, and I would go down there and I would listen to these comedy albums. I was kind of memorize them. And I used to be able to do like impressions. Like I could always imitate people. When I would go out with my friends, they would make me do it. We would go to a bar at the end of the night. We're at a diner. They're like, you know, they would make me do it. Like they enjoyed it.
Sure,
And I
yeah.
would do it for them. And in my head, I was like, I want to be a comedian. I just had that going on in my head, but I never knew there was a place that you could go do it. I went to Camden County Community College in Blackwood, New Jersey, and I met this guy, Arnold DeMarco, and he became my friend. And he came over one day and he goes, I did open mic in Philadelphia last night at this comedy club. And I was like, there's a place? And he's like, yeah, you just sign your name and they let you do 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, like I never knew that was even there. It's hilarious because living in Cherry Hill was so close to Philadelphia, but so far and scary to me, the city versus the suburbs, because I grew up in the suburbs. My parents had that old school Italian mentality, like, oh, I don't know, don't go to Philly. It's dangerous. Like they were always like that. I would even sign up for these open mics and drive back to Cherry Hill and wait the 3 or 4 hours because you'd have to sign up before the show, way before the show. And then I would drive back in to do the performance because of like being afraid of being in Philly because of what my parents said. And it's pretty classic that, you know, scroll ahead 5 years and I moved to New York City.
Yeah. How old were you when you did your first open mic? And did you have material ready to go, or you just kind of free formed it
I
on
was
stage?
when I started my first open mics. I might have had like 2 jokes. I was very unprepared. And I always tell young comics now, like, don't think you're going to walk on and be funny, because that's what I thought. In my head, I thought, oh, I'll just go up there and do a couple of jokes and see where this goes and do some impersonations. But you need jokes. You need reasons why you're doing the impersonations. You can't just go, here's this guy. Even Rich Little, who was like one of those voice guys when I was younger, they have routines that they do with the voices that make it funny and entertaining. I didn't have that yet. I did bad a bunch of times, but something told me that it's weird, because I connect Rocky, and my brother even brought up Rocky in his best man speech when I got married. And my wife did too. She's like, you have this going the distance attitude, because my brother shit on me. He goes, because I remember you in the early days doing stand-up. He goes, you were so bad, there was no reason for you to keep going. But I was smart enough to know you're not going to be good at this. You got to keep going and keep going and keep going. And I still have that attitude. Keep going, keep going. Nobody can knock you down.
That's impressive. I don't know how you guys do it. I've interviewed one other comedian, and I had the same feeling with him that I have with you, is putting yourself out there on stage in front of people. And I know we got people in our chat room right now that I'm totally not acknowledging because they're going crazy.
I can't even see the chat. I don't. It's not even on my.
Well,
screen.
it's on YouTube. Like if you go to the YouTube channel,
Yeah.
You got your hecklers in this group. So let me just say, hey
Oh,
guys.
sure. I can imagine everything they're saying. I don't even I don't have it on. Just shut it off.
Well, I'm hoping that some of my listeners were going to chime in and maybe some have some questions, but it seems like the majority of the chat people are people that are wanting to talk about you, which is totally fine. That's why you're
Oh,
here.
yeah, they're going to ask you what to ask me. I know what they're going to do, but something I've learned in the past maybe 2 or 3 years is you won't be able to even do the interview the way you want to do it if you're even looking at it. I don't even look at it. I just talk, and whatever they want to write, they write, but I'm not looking at it. I just, here I am. I'm being me, and that's all I can do. So that's probably what you should do. If you try to figure out who likes you and who doesn't, you're not going to be connected with me in our conversation.
I have people that comment on our show and they say this and that. It's fine. I always say that's great, and I always say thank you for listening. That's even taking the time to leave a negative comment. I always appreciate it, because I mean somebody listened and they had something. They had a feeling on the matter.
Right. You can read them afterwards, but if you try to read them in the moment and let them dictate the conversation, it becomes not as an entertaining and good of a conversation.
Oh yeah, I looked at your IMDb and I thought it was kind of cool that you did. And I actually watched your first appearance on TV, the Craig Kilborn show. How old were you there, and how nervous were you to be on national TV in front of like millions of people?
Well, it's funny. Craig Kilborn wasn't my first national TV appearance. Network national television appearance. Like back then, MTV, VH1 were doing a lot of stand-up shows, but they didn't consider those network television shows. Comedy Central. Back then, everybody was doing it. Comedy Central's premium blend. MTV would have comedy shows. VH1, I did a ton of these. I must have done 5 different stand-up shows on MTV, and maybe like 1 or 2 on VH1. And then Comedy Central, I did a bunch on there, and then came Craig Kilborn. That's why I wasn't really as nervous.
Right.
Because I had done all those. And believe it or not, those are the ones you should have been more nervous about, because when you do network television, it's on once. Maybe they rerun it one more time and then it's gone. But when you would do like an MTV and a VH1, they would rerun those shows sometimes 3 times a day for like 2 straight months. So you were getting known and recognized on streets everywhere. Whereas you go on Craig Kilborn, no one ever came up to me and went, I saw you on Craig Kilborn. That never happened.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And then you were on my favorite talk show host of all time, Dave Letterman. And I hope and assume you got to meet him. Did you meet him off camera or no?
No, he's not. Like I always tell people, and I think this is why I kind of like Letterman more than Leno.
Oh,
I never did.
I totally like Letterman. I like Letterman. He's my favorite after Johnny Carson, of course. But
sure,
I never watched Leno. I couldn't stand Leno. That's just me.
Yeah. Well, I went to a taping of The Tonight Show. A friend of mine did The Tonight Show with Leno, So I had that to compare to me doing Letterman. I did Letterman twice, and Dave doesn't talk to you. You come out, you do your set, he comes over and thanks you, and then they go to commercial, and then he's gone. There's no like conversation before or after. Whereas when my friend did the Tonight Show, Jay Leno comes into the green room before the taping, says hi, meets you, thanks you for doing the show, but there's something about it that feels like it's just his routine. Like he
Sure.
does it with every comedian. So it's kind of nice, but it's funny. It's like that was kind of why I didn't like the West Coast as much as I like living on the East Coast, because I
Okay.
lived in Los Angeles. And the same thing, you would go on an audition for an acting part and people will go, "Great, thank you so much." Even though they thought you sucked, you didn't have a chance at getting the part.
Right.
Whereas in New York, there was a little more of a feeling. You're like, "Oh, that didn't go well." Like you could tell by the way the person who was holding the audition would go, "Thank you."
Right.
You knew you sucked. I prefer Letterman. Just he didn't feel like meeting every comedian in his green room. And if he knew you, he'd come in and meet you, but he doesn't. He doesn't care. He's doing his job. I get it.
I love it. That's what I love about him. But it's too bad you did get to shake his hand or anything, eh?
Oh yeah, he shook his hand both times. He comes over.
Right.
We the best moment on Letterman was the second time I did it. I had this expensive blazer on, and I made a joke about the jacket and that I was going to return it after I did the show. Was like in one of the jokes, and
Right.
Letterman came over, like saying that was Joe Matarese, and like said we'll be right back after the commercial or whatever. We were still on the air, and he goes, "Nice jacket. That's a doozy," right? He got a laugh off of saying that to me, and I remembered as he said it, I had the price tag in my pocket. And I pulled the price tag out and showed it to the camera, showing that I'm returning this baby, right? And it made Dave laugh. That's all you really want as a like. I was like, I just made him laugh. It wasn't off of my stand up. It was off of a real moment that just happened, and that felt awesome. So
Awesome.
that's something I will always remember. And if you saw the camera, if I could tilt the camera, you can look on my wall here from when I did the late show. Both cue cards are on top of each other.
Oh,
One of them's a small blue one that he has on his table, and the other one there below it is his cue card. He used the old school cue cards. He didn't have
okay.
a teleprompter.
That's awesome. I would keep it too. That's a really cool idea to keep the cue card.
Yeah, the guy who booked me on it is a comedian that I knew a little bit. This guy Eddie Brill. He must have always gave that to comedians because he knows we like to save stuff. And he just brought it over. He goes, "Here, you might want to keep this." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And my wife surprised me and framed that and gave it to me as a gift one year.
So you've mentioned that you have a few friends that are in the comedy business. When you guys get together, is there like some sort of comedy standoff, or are you always in competition with each other when you're in private groups, or is there a lot of ragging on each other? Like, how does that work as a bunch of comedians in the like? I feel like, is anyone taking anybody seriously? Do you guys ever have a serious conversation, or is it just constant ribbing on each other,
Well,
cracking
it's
jokes?
funny that you say that. It depends on who your comedian friends are. There's certain comedians that are always shitting on each other.
Okay.
And then there's certain comedians that have regular conversation with each other. And I gravitate towards the comedians that have normal conversation with each other. I don't really like hanging with the guys that shit on each other. I have a couple of friends that we've been really friends for a long time and we shit on each other, but we have regular conversation too. There could be a comedian that's known for like being really funny at shitting on other guys, but usually if it's just one on one, because I don't talk like that, that they become regular. But if there's like four guys that are like that and I'm in the mix, they start to rib, and I'm not good at ribbing back. I just, when I say shit, it'll sound really mean and they think I'm an asshole. So I try to avoid those.
Yeah, it's
I
I
don't
guess.
even go on those kind of podcasts anymore.
Right. As I do with all my guests, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, Joe, I always Google what I can, obviously try to do some research, see who this person is. The reason why you and I connected, I'll just say for our listeners, the reason why you're even on this Rocky show is, like, of course, you're a Rocky fan. You did a Rocky comedy bit that I enjoyed. I thought, oh, I got to reach out to this guy because I love having guests on my show that are obviously Rocky fans. But I want you to talk about your life first before we talk about Rocky. But I saw that there was this fiasco with one of your podcasts. I don't know. You're probably tired of talking about it. It seems like you've already talked about it on other podcasts, other shows about.
You froze that. You're probably tired of talking about it. Continue.
About the fiasco about fixing Joe.
Oh yeah, when I tried to do the talk show demo version of it at a club. Yes.
Okay. First off, bravo to even put yourself out there. And I thought the concept was great. As somebody, and I'll just be honest, because I don't care what these guys in the chat, if they're going to be heckling me or whatever, that's fine. I actually suffer from mild anxiety myself. It's something that I've struggled with my whole life. Mm-hmm. And like, if I put on a show with my friends to say, hey, come fix Ryan, I can only imagine that it might open up some.
I was going to say, just to give you a little background, I did a podcast called Fixing Joe for 6 years.
Okay.
And where the listeners would give me advice, and I would talk about what the problem was of the week. And then I had this weird idea that I wanted to try it as a talk show, where instead of the host being like a letterman who talks about his current events, he goes up and does a monologue of stand-up at the top that's about problems that he's having that week. And then he sits down with a round table of comedians and they try to comedically help him. And I wanted to sell it as a television show. So I hired camera crew and I hired a monologue joke writer who's a friend of mine to write me some monologue stuff. And then a friend of mine came with a crew and filmed it. And then I booked those 3 comedians. Because of those 3 comedians that were able to fill the club, when you have these famous comedian friends, sometimes they're hard to get a hold of. You and I, we talked a little bit before we started recording, saying this is what it is, this is what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. There was none of that with who I had. And I'll say who it was. It was Anthony Cumia, Jim Norton, and Artie Lang. I couldn't get them on the phone. Like, I was just nervous that they were going to even show up on time to do the taping. There was no like, hey man, I'm trying to do a demo here for a television show, and this is what I'm looking for. They thought they were just doing a podcast, right?
Right.
They shit on me and shit on the podcast idea, and which is what I wanted, but I wanted a little bit of advice too mixed in so we could take this and it have an story arc in the episode so I could pitch it as a show. And it's really hard to pitch something as a show if your guests are telling you your idea for a show sucks.
Sure.
So that kind of ruins the pitch. So it was unusable for what I wanted to try to sell it as. I still put it up for people to see because they were so funny. Like it became a roast instead of a talk show.
Sure.
So that's kind of how that all evolved.
Have you made peace with it now and with those 3 guys?
Yeah, like I wasn't mad at them.
Right.
But like I said, when we first started talking, when I'm getting roasted, I don't know how to roast back and be funny. So there were moments in it where when I do say something back, it sounds serious. Like there's no joke. So like if you watch that, there's a moment where I go, yeah, guys, did you ever think maybe because you're so quick-witted that affects you and makes you not as vulnerable and able to be in a long-lasting relationship and or be married and have kids? You know, I went there and like all the people that were like, I guess fans of them were like, what the fuck's this guy's problem? They're doing his podcast. And I was just like, it's not really a podcast. I wasn't trying to do a podcast. If I was, I'd have you at my house and we do my podcast, or I'd have you phone in like you and I are doing right now and we'll do my podcast. But this was a TV show that I wanted to pitch and I invested cash in. You know what I mean? They were like, what the hell? And that's like, I didn't have time to tell anybody, like, I'm not good at coming back. So when I come back, that's what comes out of my mouth is how I'm really feeling. And how I was really feeling right there is like, I do think there is something to somebody being very quick-witted that makes you not as vulnerable of a person. Because if you're thinking of jokes, you're not thinking about, oh, am I connecting with Joe, who looks like he might be a little mad now? Maybe he would like some real advice. You're not observing that maybe he wants a little bit of real advice and we can make fun of him. You didn't notice that.
Right. Well, I appreciate you answering that. And I hope
I'm sure you just got 14,000 comments on that.
No, it's fine.
Be a documentary about it.
I'm looking over there at the chat, and
they love
someone actually said there was a new revelation that you gave. So maybe you gave something there that was new for people to hear. So that's good.
Well, yeah, well, that's the other thing is people think when they read these things that a negative person puts out there on the internet that that's the facts. And that's something that I've learned also from having attention from negative and positive is that a lot of facts get completely skipped in things. So I know that now when I'm reading news, this could be incorrect. There's a lot of incorrect, but you don't realize that until you're in the limelight and you see articles coming out about you where they miss things, where they
Sure.
say it a different way.
I'll never worry about that. There won't be any articles written about me.
But you do realize there is no way to be in show business and not have people liking you and hating you. There's just no way around it. There's no way to have everybody like it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, right now I'm still waiting for people to like our show. So once we get some people liking our show, then we'll get some people hating our show. I think the like comes first, hopefully, before the hate.
Well, of course, I like it.
Oh, thanks, man. We're gonna end with for you to plug your 2 1-hour specials that you have, and then we're gonna talk about Rocky. So those who are here,
if we're not going to talk about Rocky, I'm going to start crying.
no, we are, and this is why I wanted to start this start this stream talking about you as a comedian, talking about your life as a comedian, because all the people in the chat, they're here for you. They're not here for me. So once we start talking about Rocky, we're probably going to lose all our listeners for the live stream anyway. So that's fine. Before we segue into Rocky, let's talk about your first 1-hour special called, I think it's called Medicate or Medicated.
Medicated.
I know your second one, what it's called. We'll get to that in a second, but your first one's called Medicated. I haven't listened to either one. I am going to listen to it. I was going to wait till we talked, and then I was going to listen to your specials. I didn't want to talk about what you joke about in the specials because that kind of spoils people listening to it, if that makes sense. Medicated, I assume this has something to do with you taking medication for stuff and how it's affected your life, maybe?
Yeah. Anxiety and anger problems that I had, and went to therapy for many years, and then finally started medicating the problems, and how it made it a lot better, but how it affected me.
Okay. Are you better? Is the medication helping?
Yeah, night and day.
What was something that was, give me an example of what you did, that something that made you realize, gee, I've got an anger issue. Like, is there an example of something where you thought, gee,
it's fun talking to somebody that doesn't know me. I was getting fired from comedy gigs. I was getting pissed off. If someone heckled me,
right?
If you don't mind, I'll compare things to Rocky as
Sure.
you asked me these questions. I'm currently writing a play where Rocky is connected to the play and synchronizes with my life. If you're a Rocky fan, you know the first Rocky movie when he fights Spider Rico at the beginning and he's doing okay, and then Spider Rico headbutts him and he beats the living shit out of the guy and then goes into the locker room and has to get paid shit, right?
Right.
I mean, there were so many different moments in my career like that. The comedians thought it was so great when someone would heckle me. I would sweep the leg on a heckler. I would take them out to the point where they had 2 choices, either to leave and feel defeated and cry, or wait for me outside and want to kick the living shit out of me. Now, I don't want to get in a fight with you afterwards. When I'm on stage, I want to verbally beat the living fuck out of you when you would heckle me. But when I'm done, now I'm going to go to my hotel room and hide. Like, I'm not really going to want to fight you. I'm not really mad anymore, but I am mad when you're interrupting me when I'm trying to perform at my job. So I used to get too excessive with the person that would yell some shit out that was drunk. One time where I got fired, and that's what brought Fixing Joe to the first episode that I ever did. I was in Hartford, Connecticut, and this guy was heckling me, phone off, because I wouldn't stop. I was just burying him. Another one that's similar to is in Good Will Hunting at the beginning of the movie, when Will Hunting won't stop punching the guy in the face and his friends have to pull him off, and in the schoolyard. That's how I was being. I just kept shitting on this guy. And then the club manager called me the next morning and said, I can't have you go on tonight. Like, I love your comedy, he said, but we I gotta replace you. That made me start the Fixing Joe podcast, and I had Bill Burr on the first episode giving me advice to how to deal with hecklers, because he had that famous heckling thing that was on YouTube in Philadelphia. Right. So that's how that whole thing evolved, off of me trying to fix my anger problem. And not till I started medicating it many years after that did it go away. And it doesn't happen anymore. Like I always say now, the great thing about taking medication for anger and anxiety is now if I shit on somebody back, everyone in the crowd is on my side because I did it at the right moment. I didn't do it too soon. I didn't do it too long, and I didn't do it for no reason. You know
There you
what I
go.
mean? The difference between a good quarterback and a bad quarterback is a good quarterback knows how to pull back, call an audible, look where his receivers are, and know how to hit them. And that's what me being I take Celexa, 20 milligrams of that stuff for like 10 years now, and it's given me a wider view. That
And
makes
so for that special 1 hour special medicated, I would assume, of course, you talk about these issues, talk about how the medication affects you, and you draw comedy from your own trials. So that's
yes,
pretty
yes,
pretty
yes.
standard
I
comedy
started
101, I
taking
guess.
Adderall after that, but I don't think Adderall really existed that much when I did the first special medicated. My second special, the poster's wrong. I talk more about adding Adderall into the mix for ADD. So I take 2 of those medications. I mean, I take other medications for other things, but I don't talk about those on stage. I mean,
Sure.
no one wants to hear about acid reflux
Well, no, well, I
or
do.
high
That's
cholesterol, but I take meds for those too.
Oh, the chat room loves this stuff.
Oh, they're
They
loving.
Well, they're calling me a liar. They like I said that I like what I've seen on your comedy, and they're
Yeah,
calling me a liar.
they always
It's
do.
fine. See, there you go. I'm getting heckled too. I mean, people were
Yeah.
saying that. Look, I'm an easy plea, so you know. And then lastly, your second special, and I just saw it today on your website, and it's called "The Poster's Wrong." And right away, I was like, "Dude, that's from Rocky One when
Right.
Rocky's talking to Jurgens." Now, I got to ask you: does this isolate some of your fans? When you go Rocky centric, how does this affect your fans, or do you draw more fans in with this?
That's a good question. Well, I'm in Philadelphia doing that special. So
Okay,
one of the reasons why I wanted to do it in Philly, and another reason why I like this play that I've been writing for a while, I had to explain to different like directors that I had read it because they didn't get it or like understand what I was trying to do. And I go, "You're not understanding." I go, I'm putting this up in Philadelphia. I'm not putting this up in Iowa. Like this is going to go
right.
up in Philly, and people know all this stuff there. They just do. You're a little bit more unique because you live like in Vancouver, right?
Well, yeah, Victoria, British Columbia, just outside of Vancouver on the
Yeah.
island there. Yeah.
So like Rocky fans aren't as common. Like everybody's insane. I mean, if you go to an Eagles game, you know how many different times Rocky comes on the screen during an Eagles game? I mean,
Oh,
it's every
really?
yeah. This was a classic moment. I remember once being at a Yankee game, and the Yankees were playing interleague play against the Phillies, and they're showing Rocky clips on the screen during a Yankee game because they're not smart enough to realize that Philly does that and that other cities do it too. Like if you're losing a game, you put up win, Rocky, win, you know?
Right.
So
Okay.
they're playing the clips in Yankee Stadium, and this guy from Philly was in front of me. He had a Philly hat on, like I do, and he's going, "But that's Philly." He like realized there was a mistake. You shouldn't be playing Rocky clips now while you're playing the Phillies because that's our shit. I was doing it in Philly, so I knew that I could get really specific. But what I have found, the more years you do comedy, the more you realize the more specific you get about your own life, the more it hits a huge amount of people for some reason.
Sure. That makes sense. Oh, I am reading the chat now because we're talking about Rocky, so I can't help but see what some
You
people are
can't help
saying.
it, right? In Philly, you'll do Jergens and they know who you're doing. You know, if I'm in the middle of nowhere, they don't know Rocky. What brings you
Right.
out tonight, Rocky? Like they don't know who the hell that is, but somehow because you as the comedian is so committed to it, it translates. It's the same with if you read a chat room while you're talking in an interview, it's going to fuck you up. But if you really connect to what you're saying and you don't worry about what anybody thinks, it becomes funny to everybody.
Well, people are saying here that people in Philly don't like Rocky. It's probably a troll, and I'm sure there's people that hate the idea of Rocky in Philly.
Sense. I don't think I've ever met anybody that doesn't. Like I always tell people, not only do I like Rocky, I literally stand by this. The first Rocky movie is the best movie that's ever been made for so many different reasons. It's just an amazing movie. The story behind it is as good as the movie. how it got made is the same as the movie. I mean, that's amazing.
This is why we do the live chat. We want people to chime in, but some people are. I can't tell if people are making fun of me or if they're serious. Somebody wants to ride their Harley with me, which is nice. That's irrelevant, but
Where does that come from?
I don't know. I don't know. So, what was the? Now we're going to lose all our viewers because we're talking strictly about Rocky now.
You
So,
also got to realize when people write in chats, sometimes it's to plug some shit that they have.
what was the first Rocky film you saw in the theaters? Were you young enough or old enough to see the first Rocky? Or
Yes, I saw the first Rocky in a drive-in movie theater with my parents in the drizzling rain.
nice.
Yeah. I took my son to see the first Rocky in a movie theater about a year ago. They played it at a theater near here, and I took him to see it with his friends.
Yeah, they did the 40th anniversary or whatever re-release, and I missed that. They didn't show it in my city, so I didn't get to see the re-release. So I've seen parts 3 onwards in the theaters, but 1 and 2 I was too young to see the original theater release. You're the first person I've talked to that has seen all the movies so you've seen all the movies in the theaters?
Yep, every single one of them.
What's your feelings on? I'm curious on Rocky 5.
I'm the same on it, on the way everybody else feels about it. Like it's my least favorite one out of all the Rocky movies.
Yeah, the feeling that most people have for Rocky 5 is, this is me personally, is there's a really great movie in there somewhere.
You're right. Still moments where you quote them. I mean, there's not many movies where you quote lines to your friends, and Rocky 5 is one of those. Everybody quotes moments.
Right. I saw that when I was 15 in the theaters. And I remember going to this thinking, I was so excited to see this in the theater. And I was old enough to really, really make this like my movie in the theater because I was still kind of young for parts 4 and 3. The only thing that bugged me the most was that the fight took place outside the ring. And I just felt as a Rocky fan for all these years, I felt cheated as a viewer that he just threw fists with somebody out of a bar. Something I've seen 100 times in other movies. To see Rocky's street fight kind of, I know some people really like that idea of street fighting, but for me, I almost found it boring that they were just throwing punches at each other in the street. But that was my
sucks about living in Canada. You should have saw that movie in Philadelphia or South Jersey in an Italian area. People were screaming at the screen when I saw that movie like they were watching a real street fight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can remember seeing it thinking it felt like a real street fight. Like, holy shit, he's throwing kicks. He's throwing sweeping kicks. This is amazing. I remember laughing. Sometimes the Rocky movies are like cheesy and bad, but they still make you laugh.
Right.
I try to get together with all my high school friends when Rocky movies come out after Thanksgiving. Like Creed came out, we all went and saw it together. I'm hoping we can get together and see Creed 2 together. I'm such a purist. After Rocky 3, I don't think any of them were good. Even Creed, I thought was, it was decent, but I didn't think it was incredible. I don't think Creed 2 is going to be an amazing movie. I just like going to see them because they make you feel young again.
Right. Yeah, I feel the same way about Creed 1 and 2. I think it's just fun to see Rocky on the big screen. Like the fact that we still can see him in 2018 as a character on the big screen is pretty amazing. That in itself, and Drago is going to be back. I think it's going to be a little bit silly, but fun. I don't think it's going to have quite the same heart as part 1. Early reviews are in, and people are saying it's fun. You're not bored. You're having a good time.
It'll be what it is.
I'm just going to respond to a couple things here in the chat. People did like your Rocky impersonations, and in fact, that's how I first met you as a comedian. Was I saw your clip that you redubbed between Mickey and Rocky in Rocky's apartment. So that was my first exposure to you as a person, really? As a comedian, was that. So Mike Kunda on Twitter, he tweeted this out, and I had to look at this thing. And at first I was like, what the f is going on here? Like, why is this guy talking over this, the dialogue in the movie? But as it went on, I could tell that it was somebody that knows the movie very well. Now, when you did this bit, am I to understand that you did this in front of an audience? Was there a screen showing the movie while you're doing it? Or
no, that album hasn't come out yet. I recorded that one. It's part of a new comedy album that I did, and it actually has 2 halves to the album. Okay. One of the albums is really clean. That was going to be basically made for serious. Half of the album is a lot more raw and a lot of stories. I had wrote a scene that was a parody kind of to that scene in Rocky. You need a manager scene, like if Rocky was, a comedian, and it's in the posters wrong a little bit, but then I wrote like a real long scene when I was writing the play has changed so many different times that we've been writing it together. I'm writing it with this writer friend of mine who used to work for SNL. I think it's going to have less of a parody feel and it's going to have more of a one-man show feel, and why I connect with Rocky versus like doing full scenes where you're parodying it. But I recorded that in front of a live audience. And it's funny, I started to try to overdub my voice at first just to redo the scene with my dialogue. And then I realized when I got done, I go, what am I, an idiot? I have that recorded professionally in front of a live audience. Let's put the real stand-up version of this with the movie scene and see if I can time it correctly with what's happening in the scene of what's happening in my stand-up bit. It took a while to try to edit it and make it match. And then the problem with social media is you get done and your clip's 8 minutes long and you're like, where the can I put this? Nobody watches shit on YouTube anymore, it seems like. You
Right.
know?
People have a low attention spans. I'm surprised people are still in this chat for this long because people bow out so quickly. They
Well,
they
yeah,
watch something for 30
that's
seconds
because
and
they're
then
waiting for me to say something stupid and then make a copy of it and then try
okay.
to like ruin my career on social media.
Well, don't
That's what
worry.
they
It's
try to do.
it's me that's saying stupid things, and someone's already accused me of fake laughing, which I guess could be a fair guess. But considering they've
Right.
never heard me laugh before, the fact that they could assume when I laugh for real or when I don't laugh is pretty amazing. Because I don't
It's
even know
always
when I
funny because I'm like, when you're being interviewed, it's like you're not really trying to. I'm not that guy. I said that earlier. I'm not funny in an interview. I'm not going to say jokes in an interview. I'm going to answer your questions of how I really feel. That's all I can really do. I'm not going to try to enhance them with a joke. I'm listening to you, and I think you could tell I'm enjoying this. So
Well, I'm glad you are. I hope our listeners are too. I know my iTunes listeners will enjoy will enjoy the interview and probably I'll get less grief from them. This is good. I like it. I like the interaction these guys are doing. They have a tough love for you. It seems. I'm not sure why, but
yes.
so I want you to end this interview though, going through that play that you're talking about. Can you just clarify for me because I'm a little bit confused as to exactly what it is. You said it's a one man show.
There'll be actors in it. Like there'll be an actress playing my wife. There'll be an actor playing my friend, and they'll be playing other people. But it's kind of a play about my life and how it's similar to Rocky in a way, and acknowledging the similarities, figuring out it's like a math problem writing this play. It's like figuring out what the nostalgic Rocky fan wants, but then at the same time facilitating the story you're trying to tell. You
Okay.
know, how Adrian and Rocky are opposites, and my wife and I are opposites. My wife has a PhD. I quit community college. What is my running the steps moment in my life? Who is my Apollo Creed? What is my Apollo Creed? And like telling those stories. America's Got Talent, like setting me up and then dropping me down, like telling the story of that and how that it can be similar to a Rocky thing. And like, what is my going the distance? What am I trying to do? What does that represent to me? Like all the themes that are in the Rocky movie, but me, and then knowing where Rocky is involved, because I do a really good Rocky when I need to, but I don't want to be some cheesy guy. I don't want to be some Rocky impersonator. You know what I mean? I do the impression well. So figuring out where to use it. Like I said, it originally started to be like an airplane movie where it was a complete parody of Rocky, where like Apollo Creed was Kevin Hart, and Kevin Hart is giving me an opportunity to make my own sitcom instead of fight him. It's a lot of that. I talk a lot on stage now about how there's a lot of life lessons and a lot of themes in the Rocky movies. There's never not a monologue where Rocky's trying to give all the Rocky movies, they always have some sort of monologue that's a life lesson about something. It's not
Right.
always a life lesson about the same thing. Like going the distance, I apply that in my life to how you think you have to do amazing things. And sometimes if you just go the distance, that's pretty amazing. Being an amazing dad, sometimes just being an amazing dad is never leaving and never giving up and not getting divorced and being there for your kids forever on a daily basis is going the distance. All that stuff. He's an emotionally smart guy, Sylvester Stallone. Like when he writes those movies, it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit. Is a great lesson. He could be Anthony Robbins if he wanted to be Stallone. There's messages there.
I agree. Sorry if you hear those kids screaming in the background. Speaking of
No, I
kids,
didn't hear.
those are mine in the background. I like it. I mean, you're getting flack in the chat for your idea. these guys,
Of
these guys are
course.
brutal. These guys are brutal.
They don't even
Uh,
know what it is. They think
uh,
everything's a bad idea. They don't like any of my ideas.
I love. I wish people follow. Look, I wish people follow my podcast as much as they follow you around because
This is the thing, and I don't know if they realize it, but you can't see a movie that's about someone having a success story without there being haters along the way. Like,
oh
even if you
yeah,
go see Bohemian Rhapsody, which I just saw, the fucking guy's telling them that the song Bohemian Rhapsody is too long and it's the worst. And what is it? It ends up being one of the
right. No,
greatest rock anthems of all time. So it's like, if you were ever to listen to somebody who's telling you that, you just got to listen to yourself, and you just got to channel everything else out.
oh, I agree. This is why I do my podcast. I don't have any. We barely have any listeners. Not like these other huge podcasts. I do it because it's fun. I do it for me. I
Right.
do it with my brother. Every now and then we get to meet interesting people like yourself. We meet other fans of Rocky online and become friends with them. But at the end of the day, you're doing it because you enjoy doing it. If you expect to be a rags to riches story from something that brings you joy, that's just a nice byproduct at the end of the day. But if it brings you joy, let the people talk. They're going to talk anyways.
Right. What
Uh,
can I ask you a quick question?
sure, of course.
What's the moment in a Rocky movie that makes you cry?
Oh, well, I'm such a baby. Well, there's two parts that get me teared up. One when he's talking to Adrian on the bed before the big
The
fight.
one?
Yeah, when he's lying on the bed before the fight and he's giving that speech, of course, about how he doesn't want to be just another bum from the neighborhood.
Right.
Because you know what's coming later in the movie, so that part means more to you on repeat viewings. And then, of course, the scene in round 14 when he's crawling on his hands and knees towards the corner of the ring to pull himself up before that final round bell goes, because he wants to get up, and Mickey's screaming, stay down. And he's trying to get up because he knows, and we as a viewer know that at this moment he just wants to get up. He doesn't want to be knocked out in this round. He wants to go to that 15th round. So those two parts get me really choked up.
Right.
I'm not tearing. So just said here, I'm tearing up. I don't know why. I just got my voice just got a
You
little
thought
bit
your
cracky.
voice
I don't know
was
why.
teary?
I got emotional, but I'm not tearing
That's
up talking
good.
about it.
That means because you love it. I've had that sneak up on me before when I'm talking about something from a Rocky movie. I'm like, did I just cry a little bit when I was explaining that?
I
I
wonder.
actually got to interview Chuck Wepner, who that movie is
Oh yeah,
based on, and hear his side of the story of when how he's trying to go the distance with Muhammad Ali. It was pretty
right.
amazing. I'll tell you real quick my cry moment. I don't know. I don't know if you feel it. I don't know why I feel it in this moment.
Sure.
And it might be because I relate, because I feel like I'm kind of a sensitive guy also. I do find that people identify and love movies that remind them of themselves, right?
Yes.
Rocky's a tough guy, but he's sensitive. Like I used to be, think I was I might have come across like a tough guy and with the hecklers and getting pissed and act like I'm going to beat the shit out of everybody. But really, all I want to do is have a good conversation and feel connected when we're talking. It's fine with me. I'm not trying. I don't want to fight anybody ever. When he does the whole press conference in the first Rocky, and they're watching it back on that shitty television, and Paulie keeps saying they're taking cheap shots, and he says it doesn't bother me. And then he leaves their house, and Adrian walks away, and he looks at her and says, I said those cheap shots didn't bother me. They did. That gets me. The trolls come at me because they know I'm a sensitive guy, and that's why they come at me. It's kind of
Sure.
like they're my bully. They know I'm a sensitive guy, and they know if they shit on me like 200 times, one of them might stick.
Right.
One of them might hurt my feelings. It's my best quality and my worst quality is that I'm a sensitive guy and that I do feel things, and that's kind of like Rocky too. He's a good boxer. That could make you a shitty boxer if you like give a shit that you're getting punched in the face.
Yeah. What do you say? After a while, it starts to sting a bit. 500 times
Yeah.
a night, it starts to sting a bit. Yeah.
Starts to sting. Like I always say that, like there's times where I'm driving around the block looking for a parking spot for a comedy club in New York City that I've done 16,000 times for the last 30 years. And I'm like, you're still fucking looking for parking spots. It starts to sting after a while, but then you got to suck it up and you got to go do it. You're like, go do it, man. Another thing my brother will say, he'll like, where some people will go, oh, what was that other boxing movie with the Depression?
Oh, Cinderella Man.
Cinderella Man. My cousin texted me one day or called me one day and goes, Cinderella, man, it's as good as Rocky. And my brother was like offended. He's like, good as Rocky?
Right.
Doesn't even have a soundtrack. Like, not only is Rocky a great movie, like the soundtrack is also incredible. And you just listen to the inside like liner notes to the Rocky album. Have you ever read that speech that Stallone writes about Bill Conti, the guy who made all the music?
Yes, I have read that. It's been a long time, but I have read that tribute. Yeah.
That's amazing. And it's kind of funny.
I'm going to close the show. Before we do, though, I just want to acknowledge a couple things here. So there's been a couple comments in the chat, which is fine, where somebody said they were expecting a more in-depth Rocky discussion. I will say, for the first-time listeners of this podcast,
tell them you're still trying to go the distance. I'm only your 20th interview.
Well, here's the thing. What I want to say is I have 90 episodes that talk about Rocky behind this one, so to speak. So
yeah, exactly. You've said it all already. You're going to want to re-say the same shit.
Well, not just that. I mean, we're on season 4, which is Rocky 4 right now, and we're doing each movie. So people really want to hear my discussion about Rocky, by all means, check us out on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. We're on there. This interview, the reason why I do interviews too, is it's just to break it up a little bit, of course, to talk to people that are Rocky fans, hear about your life a little bit. And I guess it brings out the interviewer in me a little bit because I like talking to people, and it gives me a break to strictly talk about Rocky for, an hour. So I really appreciate you coming on, Joe, being patient with the technical issues at the beginning, all that good stuff. If there's anything you want to close with before we close the show, go ahead, please.
I just want to talk to anyone who's ever at a show where someone says, what's your favorite obscure part of Rocky? And you yell, Adrian, I hate you.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah, that's very obscure. Nobody ever says that one. Yeah, fair enough.
Your most obscure Rocky fact that
Mine?
That you know, yeah.
Play
they
later.
do that a lot in Philly radio. They'll do like trivia. And my brother was texting me like a week ago. There was like some trivia. I'm like, what kind of whiskey was Paulie drinking when he was in the bathroom in the first Rocky movie? And they'll know.
One of my questions I actually just put on our Facebook page was in the scene in Rocky 5, the best scene in Rocky 5, where the Mickey Rocky flashback.
Mm-hmm.
Did that take place before the first Apollo fight or before the second Apollo fight?
Oh, wow. You're hitting me with a question on Rocky 5. You mean when they're showing the ring stuff? Dude, I got to be honest. I don't even know.
Well, it's obscure, and it's kind of a trick question. There's no real indication when it is. I just like to think it takes place before the second Apollo fight because of how much Mickey loves Rocky at this moment. It would make more sense that his love of Rocky increased after the first fight because he didn't really love him that much before the first fight.
Right, no. He was doing it because he saw an opportunity. It was like similar to like if you all of a sudden got a lot of Twitter followers. Now all of a sudden some comedy manager's like, I want to manage you. I think you got it. And like, no, you don't. You just saw that so similar to a person in the entertainment industry's career, like representation. They only want you when they know they can make some money with you. I mean, one of the biggest amounts of money I ever made, I got this development deal with Will Smith's production company years ago. I switched managers because this manager wanted me. I did it. And he made me that money like within a month. And it's like, I know he wanted to manage me because he had the connection already. He knew the guy. He already had a development deal. He was representing Nick Cannon. And he was like, well, here's another young guy who I could probably score some money for. And then I'll take my cut. And then he got his cut. And then he became a shitty manager again after he got his percentage. He even said to me once, he goes, just so you know, if this sitcom that we're about to make doesn't get picked up, we're not going to be hanging out that much. Not as much as we've been hanging out. We were like friends. And he told me that. I was like, there is no more LA moment than that. We were literally at Brett Ratner's bachelor party together at a strip club. There's like strippers giving us lap dances, Brett Ratner, my manager, and then me. And my manager looks at me and goes, if that doesn't get picked up, we're probably not going to be doing this shit anymore. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This guy's so honest. But, it's kind of like Letterman, I kind of liked it. I was like, I get it. It's all about the money, man.
Well, sure. Yeah, well, this podcast needs a manager. I don't make any money off this thing. All right, we're gonna close up. These guys are these guys are getting brutal in the chat over here. Hey, I want to thank them. I want to thank them for listening, participating. I'll let you read the chat later.
I won't even read the chat.
I'm just letting you guys know that are listening to the show, listening to me for the first time. It's just not my style. I'm Canadian. I'm a nice guy. I'm not here to cause trouble for anyone, especially for my guests. Joe, you've been very kind to come on my show. I'm just a ham and egger. Thanks for bringing in your audience to listen to my show. Hopefully, these guys who are Rocky fans will come and listen to our back catalog and future catalog. So, thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks for having me, man. I wish you much luck.
Thank you, and you too.
Take it easy.
Thank you.